Looking to improve your life, brush up on your personal growth techniques? You are in the right place. Welcome to Life's Little Lessons with your host, author of Designing Your Own Destiny, Kevin A. Dunlap.
Hello, everybody. This is Kevin Dunlap from Life's Little Lessons, and I wanted to welcome you back to our show. Today, I have a gentleman coming in from Nova Scotia, Canada, which is on the Atlantic side of Canada, and he's got a podcast as well as a book out there. And it's what his messages has been actually quite interesting. So, I wanted to introduce Tim Allison as well as his podcast called Screw the Naysayers. Tim, welcome to our show today.
Hey, Kevin, that's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, so we were talking a little bit before, and you have a book that's called Screw the Naysayers, and you got a podcast, and even your website's all the same thing.
Yeah.
What is Screw the Naysayers, and how did you come up with that?
Yeah, cool. Okay, so, what it really is that, I, first of all, for most of my entrepreneurial life, Kevin, I mean, whenever I've always felt different, and whenever I try and do something that feels right for me and everything, I'm just sort of used to being surrounded by people telling me I'm an idiot or it'll never work, or people that aren't inside your skin. Like, it really started when I walked away from a fabulous job. I had one of the highest paying sales jobs in Canada. And so for my family and friends and everything, I was kind of the poster child for what success is supposed to look like. The tailor-made suits and the monogram shirts and the jewelry and the six-figure income. But I mean, it was killing me. And I had two young kids that I was, never seeing. I was abusing alcohol in order to deal with the stress, and also just because of the lifestyle that came with traveling around on an unlimited expense account when you're supposed to wine and dine your clients whenever you're out of town and all this kind of stuff. And so when I quit and with my family moved to this tiny little rural fishing village in Nova Scotia, everybody said, well, you're a total idiot. Not only that, they really tried to make me feel guilty. They said I was irresponsible and a bad parent, that I was jeopardizing my family's future, because they couldn't see what was going on in my life. I mean, I know that I would have been dead or divorced or both, probably within 5 years, maybe sooner, if I'd stayed in that mess. So I learned really early on in life. I was 31 at the time, and for me, I thought that was fairly early to get this sorted out. That the world is full of people that have opinions on what you should or should not be doing, and most of them are negative. Most of the ones that they choose to share with you are negative, or, as I say, naysayers. And I just think it's critically important, and I've learned through life that you have to learn to tune out all that negativity. And it's really hard, because even if you, like, when I reflect upon the move I made, I did quit, so I didn't listen to them and I quit. And I did move to this little fishing village, and I did start my own company, because it was literally the only option I had. It was make my own job or move to a city somewhere. There just wasn't any work. But I realize now, looking back, Kevin, that all of that negativity had still screwed me up, because I had such limited self-beliefs. Mm-hmm. I mean, I for 3 years, I went around telling everybody my goal in life is to make enough money to put food on the table and pay the bills. So you and I have both been around long enough. We both got enough gray hair to know that that's exactly what I did. What we tell ourselves is the limit of what we're capable of doing. We don't go past that.
Exactly.
And it was only when a great friend and mentor that came into my life sort of kicked me in the butt and made me realize what an insanely stupid assumption I was making, that just because I'd moved, it didn't mean I had to give up any thoughts of a good career. And so from that moment on, that business really soared. So Screw the Naysayers is, just at this stage in my life, I've been an entrepreneur, business coach, and life coach and the like for 30 some odd years. The world of business has been really good to me, and it's afforded me the opportunity to raise my kids in the community that we wanted to live in. I'm still looking out my window right now at the same trees and forests that I did 30 years ago, and there's no sign of any human beings, except our faces on this on our respective term monitors. And so I look around, and what got me so angry is that still today, 30 years after I proved all those idiots wrong, we're still, telling our kids, as we're raising them, that they need to comply with society's expectations of them. We're still telling them that success is defined by going to school, getting good grades, getting into a good university, getting a degree, getting a good job, climb that corporate ladder. nobody's asking these kids what they really want. I say kids because, 20, 30, whatever, but nobody's asking them what they really want in life. And there's this massive disconnect right now going on between the generations. The millennials are stuck in the middle. They really tried to follow in our footsteps. They really did. Like they said, okay, I think my parents are kind of screwed up, and I think they've had they've been a lot less happy than they're letting on. And I don't really know that I want that, but they tell me that this is what I need to do. So I've gone to university, and it's when it's not working out for them, which for a huge percentage of them, it's not. They really don't know, what to do, because they've been told in school that your job is to sit back and wait for instructions. I hate the label, Gen Z and all this kind of stuff, but 24 and under right now, they're not buying into any of this at all. Like they don't want anything to do with the lifestyle that we had. But they're still surrounded by people when they say, no, I don't want to go work for a big corporation. I think I want to travel the world and be a storyteller and make a living. There are people making their living today as storytellers, not as authors, storytellers, going out and telling their story and other people's stories. And there's so many other ways that people are doing that, but they're not surrounded by a support system that tells them that that's good. So this is a long answer, but it's because I'm so darn passionate about it. Screw the Naysayers is just really all about tuning out all that BS. You're still being spoon-fed from a generation above you that doesn't understand. Doesn't mean they don't love you. They're telling you what they think is in your best interest, but the reality is they don't know the world you're working in and living in. And it's to encourage them to just go for it. Decide what's important to you, what you care about. If making a difference is in the world and somebody tells you, well, that's great, so work for 30 years so you can make enough money so later you can make a difference, tell them to pound sand and go about trying to change the world yourself today. I mean, because that's where your happiness and joy and fulfillment comes from. I like money, but if we make our definitions of success around our ability to get money, then we have an instant recipe for unhappiness.
And I so fully agree with you, because when you were talking about this, it reminded me of a video that I've seen. It's out of London or Britain, whatever. And it's a guy by the name of Alan Watts. I think it's Allan, and his last name Watts. And he's got there's a thing. He's got a talk, but they turn it to a video. It's called "What Do You Desire?" Mm-hmm. And it talks exactly about what you follow your passion, and then you build your career or your finances around that passion. Because too many of us are going to cubicle jobs that we don't enjoy, that we don't like, and we are surrounded by other people that are, just call it the employees. I was going to say something different, but that's only for the U.S. That we're only surrounded by people that are also other employees, and they don't have the mindset as an entrepreneur does. I know when I was getting started, even starting my own business, writing my first book, writing my second book, people, a lot of people are around me. Well, at that time, I started limiting that, but I could understand where a lot of people are around you say, "Who are you? Why? How can you be an author? How can you do your own business?" And the thing is, like you say, screw the naysayers. They're coming at you with a loving interest, but they don't understand.
Yeah, no.
And I mean, I had a friend of mine years ago when I still lived in North Carolina. I was working in the film industry, and he was a roommate of mine at the time, and he was wanting to become an actor. And his mom was discouraging him from doing that. And I go, "Your mom may love you to death. I get that, but why are you listening to her? She has no idea what it takes to be an actor. Talk to other actors. Talk to other people in the industry. Get advice from them. Go and get the advice from the experts, the people that have shown that they've done it." So so I fully agree with where you're coming from in this.
Yeah, and it really is. And you raised another really important point there, Kevin, when you talked about mindset, because I think that's really ultimately what caused me to sort of launch this movement, which is what it really is. I mean, it's the book, it's my podcast, it's a online community that I'm putting together for young entrepreneurs. But it really is mostly about. I can't tell you what you care about. I can't tell you what your passion is. I can't define success for you. But I can help you create a mindset so you can figure that out. I can help you create a mindset where, let's think about what we teach kids in school. I talked about how we teach them to wait for instructions, because that's what we do. Sit down, shut up, and wait for instructions. So first thing you got to do is forget about that, because if you sit back waiting for somebody to tell you what you want, first of all, anybody that does tell you is wrong. But for the most part, they'll stop talking to you. But we also teach them, and this is such a terrible thing, we teach them that failure is horrible. I mean, it's to be avoided at all costs. I mean, think of the consequences when we're young. And again, it's getting worse with all these helicopter, parents that are out there. You slip and skin your knee or something like that, and you come home and, oh, poor dear, and cuddle and all this kind of stuff. And don't ever do that again, because, gosh, go back out there and skin the other one. I mean, it's like, how else are you going to figure out what your limits are and what you enjoy? But then when you were talking about writing a book, I mean, or starting a business, I mean, guarantee anybody, I can tell you with complete certainty to anybody that's thinking about starting a business, you're going to fail at a lot of different things along the road. Doesn't mean you will fail in terms of your final destination, but you will try things that aren't going to work. And if you allow those things to demoralize you or cause you to quit or you sit and regret, you live in regret saying, God, I wish I hadn't wasted that money or tried this, you'll never get there. You'll be miserable. And entrepreneurship, as is life really, it's not a particular destination. You decide what you care about, the impact you're trying to have with people, and you're working on towards that. And if you're not enjoying that journey, then I would kindly suggest that you go find something else to do. Mm-hmm. But if you continue to have that mindset that every time you run into adversity, that a really good friend of mine, Brian Schulman, puts it, I think really, succinctly, he says, there is no such thing as failure. And, in business in particular, you try things and they either work or you learn, but both are a positive outcome. Well, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? What else might work? And on we go. But so, I just think it's so important for those of us that get it, and those of us that have enjoyed an entrepreneurial life, which can, be experienced in so many different ways. We owe it to this to these younger generations to provide that kind of support structure that they're going to need in order to get out there and do the things they want to do. And I think it's past the point where we can really hope to educate their parents on it, because they're not listening to these shows. If they are, they're already entrepreneurially oriented, and it's, and it also points out, I mean, just I've always considered myself to be somewhat of a social activist, in the sense that I want an inclusive society. I want opportunities to be based upon our desire and our effort and what we care about and all those kind of things. But I'm so aware that, I use my own kids as an example. I mean, they're both millennials, and, but they're both doing very well. And my daughter's followed in my footsteps as an entrepreneur. She didn't get that training at school or at university or anything like that, but she watched by example, what I was doing. And I realize now I didn't have any idea. I mean, as a parent, you think what your job is to do is to teach them to be respectful and to, be empathetic and to, pursue knowledge and help others and all those, we consider those kind of things to be parenting, good parenting, and it is. But the interesting part is that the stuff that actually sticks with them the most is not what we try to teach them to do. It's what we're actually doing, right. And so if we're being respectful to people, they're going to be respectful to people. If we, don't, go off the deep end when something doesn't work out, then they'll start to, develop some thicker skin. If we don't, go coddle them when something doesn't work out, but try to provide ways for them to learn. But the thing is that if you look at the family situations that so many young people are growing up in today, they're not being surrounded by those kind of learning experiences. And now when we know that by 2020, 50% of the jobs in the United States are going to be in the freelance economy, the idea of working for an employer in another 20 or 25 years, you're going to be the minority for sure. That actually you'll be working for companies, but through your own business. So that means you got to create your own opportunities. And so this is mindset. And this is what we need to impact. And we have to do it with positivity, because they're surrounded by so much negativity that will tell them every time they have an idea, it's bad. And so, we got to expose those I don't know how much of a family audience you have, but my saying is, and it's reasonably polite, but my saying is that, the best definition I can come up for naysayers is that they're a bunch of uninformed dickheads. Like, you just have to make fun of them in your mind, not to their face. You just have to make fun of them in your mind so you can just let it go, and
Well, to me, a corollary to that is start being more aware of who you are actually associating with. So if you are hanging out, let's say, hanging out with a lot of other employee-minded people, start hanging out with go to networking events, start becoming friends with other people that are building their businesses, and you'd be surprised just how much support you can get from that, even if it's somebody that's in a completely different industry or even competing. I mean, I started doing a lot of personal growth in 2010.
mm,
And I'm talking about live classes. I'm not talking about listening to Jim Rohn or Tony Robbins and stuff, which is good. Those are good ways to keep it going. But I started hanging out with other people that are looking to actively grow themselves through the personal growth and personal development. Then it's like when I was writing my second book, it's like, hey, I'm going to go write this book. It's going to be on personal development. It's called Designing Your Own Destiny. It's going to be, how do you get from point A to point Z in whatever you want in your life, especially if it's business related. And then I realized at that time, 90% of my friends were all like, how can I help? Can I write you a testimonial for your book? Or how can I review your book? Like, okay, thank you. And now I'm writing my third book, and it may be launched a little bit right before this show goes to air. So if you're listening to this evergreen, it may already be launched, and it's called The Winner's Code, Secrets of the Winner's Mindset. So it's all about mind. The whole book is about mindset. I have 8 mindsets in there. Only one, I call it the winner's mindset, is all about win-win. How can you win what you want to get by helping other people win as well? And there are no naysayers in that. And the naysayer is you figure out, how do you get away from being a naysayer to actually becoming supportive of yourself and other people.
Yeah. No, and I think it's a great point about who you hang out with. And I think it's also a great point to be kind of a witness to yourself, in the sense that, because I don't get away with it at all anymore now, because I'm so branded as the Screw the Naysayer guy. But I'm human. At the odd time, I'll say something to somebody, more often about something I was thinking about myself, and people will start wagging their fingers at me politely, but saying, you're being a naysayer, and I know it sounds crazy, but we all do it, eh? So we just really need to, and I think sometimes we don't even understand the impact of our words. To us, we're just being light about it or whatever. But the thing about, there's so many things I dislike about naysayers. But one of the things that I've learned about all that negative talk is that the first person that tells you your idea is bad, especially if you figure they don't know what they're talking about, you laugh about it, yeah, whatever. And the second and the third. But if 10 people in one day separately tell you that your idea is bad, even if they're all completely uninformed and have no real knowledge or understanding of what it is you're trying to do, somehow that 10 people can feel like 100. It really can. There's this multiplier effect, and then we start becoming negative in our own head. We start questioning. It's our internal naysayer that gets to be our, the adversary here. The thing that I've learned about that as well, and that's again what's behind my mission here, is that I know for a fact just as well, the support and the belief of even one person that to have some credibility, some knowledge, or can drown out the voices of 1,000 people. Mm-hmm. If I look you in the eye and say, Kevin, I read that book, and that is, I've been in business for 30 years. That is absolutely the best book I've ever read. You are going to go back, and even if it's a draft or whatever, you're going to go back to your desk to do your next edit or something in such good frame of mind. Mm. And it won't matter if all day everybody told you it was a piece of what. But it's so important that we provide that support. And honestly, if we don't have something positive to say to somebody, then let's just stop saying it. Like, are we really adding value to people's lives if we read it and we really didn't think it was that good? Unless we can constructively say, you could make it better by.
Yeah.
But if we're just going to say, I think you missed the point, or it didn't work for me, even if that's true, why say it? You're not adding any value to it. Belief is one of another thing that I say in my book is that, aside from, love, unconditional love, unconditionally believing in somebody's ability to do something, that's a powerful gift. Somebody just comes to you and you say, look, Kevin, I'm not even sure, I'm not even an expert in this stuff you're talking about, but I'm an expert in you because I know you and I believe in you. And I can tell you really care about this, you really want to get this done, and I believe in you. We would only do more of that. The people, and if you get, like you've just said, if you surround yourself with people that say that, or who start with a question very similar to the one that they were asking you. I mean, I use all the time, how can I help? You meet somebody, if you start a conversation, that sounds interesting. How can I help? And then all of a sudden, hundreds of people are saying the same thing back to you. And life gets a lot easier. And, the world of all the negativity that's out there, you find yourself not wanting to bother watching the TV news. I haven't watched the news on TV in years. And I don't listen to it. I might scan, in Canada, I'll scan the national, online news service just so I'm aware if something really mega dramatic has taken place. But I almost read none of the detail. And I certainly won't listen to anybody else's oral interpretation of what's going on in the world around me. I'm just too busy enjoying life and trying to help people. And it's such a powerful thing. Just wish more people could realize the strength that comes from that.
Well, and I agree with you. I stopped watching the news probably 7 or 8 years ago. And since then, I've not had cable in years. I mean, I have a device where I can watch whatever TV shows I want to watch. Then it has to be very deliberate which ones I'm picking. But that means the only way I get news is if I happen to see it on Facebook or if I happen to see it, and I don't go out searching it. So if I hear about it from somebody else, then stay informed. But for the most part, because most of the news is negative. I've got a friend of mine. Her name is Kimberly. I met her in college. She was my very first college friend after getting out of the service, and she ended up becoming a broadcast journalist and anchor in Washington, D.C., which is where she's from. And I talked to her. I hadn't talked to her in a couple of decades, and then we kind of brushed up with each other about a year or so ago, and she now has a completely different business. And I said, whatever happened? Because I knew you wanted to be an anchor and be on TV. And she said, the reason I got out of it was just too negative.
Yeah.
And that's coming from an anchor.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, it's just the whole outlook of that so many people seem to be carrying. Mm-hmm. And so your point is so important. Just if you're around people like that, your ability to even understand who you are. Like if you won't even be able to get to that level of self-awareness to understand what you want and to believe that it's possible if you just surround yourself with people that are bringing you down all the time. That's why there's a whole lot of people my age and older, and getting to into their retirement years that are looking back now, and they may not want to say it overtly, but the truth of the matter is that they're looking back on their life with a lot of regret. Mm-hmm. And they're realizing those missed opportunities, and that so many of the things they thought were important actually weren't meaningful at all. And I want to make sure that people don't think I'm against money, because I like money. I mean, money allows us to do things. It's allowed me to travel the world and take my kids around and let them see different cultures and do all these kind of things. But I just know that there's so many different ways that we can make money in this world. A vast majority of them are legal, which are, the only ones that I'd be interested in. But why the heck would you invest, if you're 20-something years old, would you invest your time in something to make money that isn't fulfilling you inside? Right. That doesn't have some sense of purpose to it. And anybody who says you don't need a purpose is full of what.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you don't have a purpose, then you're just drifting or you're just existing. Then
you're making money for the sake of making money, and for that, and the result is that you're chasing goals that other people are setting for you. And when you do that, it's a recipe for a rude awakening. And the people, here's another observation that I've certainly seen on my show and in my podcast. I'm sure you would have too, Kevin. But I've interviewed some really, truly amazing people that have overcome tremendous adversity and come back to do very special things. But there is that common element. Before they all were chasing goals that other people had set for them. And before they were able to break out of it, some infrastructure rattling event had to happen. A young mother who's diagnosed with stress-induced MS 3 months after her daughter is born gets one heck of a wake-up call. I talked to a guy who, Kevin Boomer, who in the space of a week, he found out his wife was having an affair, he lost his job, and he ended up in the hospital for health reasons. And yet he's able to actually look at that with gratitude now, realizing that, that the path he was on was one of complete self-destruction. And he was convinced, 100% convinced, he was doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing, chasing that corporate dream. And it's not to say that people can't do that. If that's your dream, that's okay. As long as the company you're working for is doing the kind of things that you care about and you feel fulfilled doing it. I'm not slanging jobs, or going at certain professions, but I'm simply saying that most people don't choose that. They're told that that's what they ought to do. And it's such a shame that we have to get to the point where we might have to almost die or have a divorce or something like that before we do something about it.
Well, and that actually did kind of happen to me back because we're in August right now of 2018, and back in May 2018, I suffered from a stroke that put me in the hospital for basically 5 days, 3 days of which were in the ICU, the surgical ICU. Are they going to be operating in my brain to do it? So, I mean, it affected my speech a lot. It did not affect my ability to bathe or dress or feed myself. Like strokes can do. Yes. But it was a rude awakening for me as well, and that was just 3 months ago. Yeah. So it's sometimes when those life event occurs, now I look at that stroke as that I'm glad it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't too big of a life changing, but it still was like, what is my attitude? This is the whole reason I wrote the mindset book is how are you looking at any situation in your life? Yes, the divorce could be good or bad, or however you want to phrase it, but it still was like we were talking about before, like you were talking about failures, it was still a lesson that I learned.
Yeah. And I think the thing is that once things happen, trying to define them as good or bad or whatever. I was talking to someone today that talked about being in a very tough place in her life, and she thought she was going in one direction and now she's sort of being forced in another direction. And she's seeing it as a very negative thing. And the only advice I could give is that big changes in life almost always present themselves as some form of adversity. In other words, it feels like a problem, and it is a problem. Being in the hospital or in the ICU where bad things could happen or whatever is definitely a problem. But how you deal with that situation afterwards and where you end up as a result, don't assume that where you're going is a bad thing. And more often than not, the most amazing things we see happening to people in life come after, facing some adversity, being sort of forced to confront change. And then 5 years later, or 3 years later, or 3 months later, you have some gratitude that there was something, something good came of this.
Oh, yeah. And I think all of us had that. I could name 2 or 3 right off the top of my head where I had a life-altering event occur. I mean, I joined the United States Navy to go into the nuclear power program, and I ended up basically getting kicked out of the nuclear power program on the day before going.
Oh my!
And so that's the whole reason I joined the Navy. But it put me into what they call TPU, a temporary processing unit, for 3 months. And it says, okay, we don't know what to do with you. I mean, you were supposed to go to nuclear power, you can no longer go. However, that actually got me to be able to do 2 tours of duty is based out of Yokosuka, Japan. So I got to see 12 countries because of it.
Yeah.
I got to live amongst other cultures because of losing that. So to me, that's probably, for a life-changing event is like, at the time that it happens, like, what am I going to do now? I still got 4 years to go. I mean, what am I going to do with myself?
Yeah.
And then it ended up giving me the chance to travel and see the world.
So, yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's a great life if we allow it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So look at and I always say, look at these negative events or these events that happen in your life, and then look back and say this amount of it, like you said, happened 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 months ago, whatever. What is the positive that came from that? Let's say you got a divorce, as an example. What is the positive that happened for that? Well, not to say you're remarried to even what you consider a better person. Well, you did have the divorce, you never would have gotten the second marriage. I mean, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, my friend, the one I talked about that had the wife was having an affair and lost his job and ended up in the hospital. He now talks about the fact that he's now on very good terms with, pardon me, I'm with the throat here, but with his ex-wife and her partner. And there's a child who's very close to him. And he said, you know what, if this hadn't happened, this little human being wouldn't be in this world and wouldn't be a great friend of our kids, and I wouldn't be a part of my life. And so, what an amazing way of looking at it. That stuff, good things can come if we allow them to.
Yes. If you just change, again, the mindset. How do you look at it?
Mindset.
So Tim, as we're about to wrap up here, I know you've got a website. It was called, I believe it was screwthenaysayers.com.
Yeah.
So SCREW. THE for the naysayers is spelled NAYSAYERS.com.
Yep.
And on this, and I know your website also hosts your podcast as well.
Yeah. So they can hit us up there for our podcast. There's links to all, and of course it's all available like yours and, in all the usual spots. We've got a new online mentoring support community for young entrepreneurs that called Entre-sphere, that they'll be able to get information on there. They can get links to our book. They can also, Kevin, hit us up on Instagram, Screw the Naysayers. We're really, really active on Instagram. I should have mentioned that one to you. It's just, we just love to hear from people. And I'm super active on LinkedIn as well, just under, Tim Allison with one L.
Okay, so that's Tim Allison, T-A-M, of course, for Timothy, and Allison as his last name, A-L-I-S-O-N.
Yeah, just to be different. Yeah, that's exactly it. And yeah, I just love talking to people. I love hearing stories about Screw the Naysayers, and anybody who wants to reach out, please do.
Okay. Well, we had Tim Allison with Screw the Naysayers. Again, he does have a book and a podcast with the same name, and even a website with the same name. So that's why he's known as this. Of course, my name is Kevin Dunlap. For those of you that are also looking to do a little bit of actual more growth stuff like that, I do have a free giveaway on my website. Again, that's kevinadunlap.com/free gift, and you can download my 8 steps to achieving any goal. Well, anyway, everybody, thank you for joining us at Life's Little Lessons. And to Tim Allison, it was great having you here today.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, Kevin.
Oh, my pleasure. Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Life's Little Lessons with your host, author of Designing Your Own Destiny, Kevin A. Dunlap. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit kevinadunlap.com, facebook.com/kevinadunlap.author, and on Twitter @KevinADunlap. We'll catch you on the next episode of Life's Little Lessons.